Hi, so this is next episode in my stories about Georgia and my experience in Caucasus, and just continuing my story about our first arrival to Tbilisi. And in the previous episode I was mainly focusing on how we were looking for an apartment. So now I will give you a bit of a feel how it was to arrive in business perspective and my first approach to office, and the circumstance that was there available, and some small details around us getting into living into sort of living setup and being present in Georgia for many months to come. So I do not remember particularly when my car arrived, my company car arrived, but it was brought in from Baku. So it had actually Azeri number plates, which is an important thing for the future developments that I will mention later on. So but anyway, it was brought in from Baku because in Baku in Azerbaijan there was this sort of a branch office for three Caucasian republics, for Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. And it's a bit funny thing, because as if you were watching previous episodes, then you know that the reason or how I got to get the proposal to join to work for PNG in Georgia and Armenia was related to the fact that my previous regional manager was moved to be a manager for Central Asia and Caucasus. For the point when I arrived basically on ground, Central Asia and Caucasus were separated or were in the process of separation. So basically I never really got in a very much of a contact with my previous regional manager, Hans-Peter Heissen, and basically I was reporting to Baku office, and Baku office was basically splitting off from region of Central Asia and Caucasus. I think for a period Caucasus was sort of a separate entity before it was joined regionally with Turkey. So there were those shifts back and forth with Central Asia from time to time. But anyway, that was a bit funny that I got there because of Hans-Peter Heissen leading Caucasus, Central Asia, and then when I got there, I had not much of a relationship with Central Asia. Now, so I got my car, so I was able to drive back and forth in Tbilisi and start learning how to drive in Tbilisi. It was very chaotic. So there are a couple of things. First of all, again, there were no Google Maps or Waze or whatsoever, things like that. So navigation was based on actual paper map. But the thing around paper maps for Tbilisi or for Georgia or for whatever was that they were pretty much not existent. If back in Latvia I was used to have to buy very precise street maps and of cities and towns and road maps and something like that, it was quite a nightmare to get a real map of Tbilisi, which would not be just schematic sort of tourist map, but that you can understand, and you would have street names and everything. But I got it anyway. So on top of the fact that you have to navigate by looking on the map and trying to understand which turn is it, like second or first, and then what, and then what, and then what, and then of course also trying to understand which street is one way or both ways, and all those things. Traffic in Tbilisi was quite chaotic. It was probably not, if you have been in whatever in India or Taiwan or Thailand, and then probably not that chaotic as there are not so many people as well, and basically everybody is driving cars, so there are no bikes and everything around. So this is another specific of Georgia actually. for many years to come, driving a motorcycle would be something that you would not see motorcycles on Tbilisi streets or Georgia streets for years and years to come. Neither bicycles. So it was cars or pedestrians, if we talk about streets, and of course cows and all the other stuff, all the other types of animals that might be crossing streets pretty frequently in smaller towns and even in the outskirts of Tbilisi. Anyway, so I had to learn to drive in a new city with very limited possibility to find the proper navigation tool, and also the sort of rules and rhythms of driving in that city. I mean, luckily I had quite an experience of driving as a salesperson. I've been driving 5,000 to 6,000 kilometers a month previously, and so I was pretty accustomed to drive. So I just needed to drive to get accustomed to more crazy driving, which was not something very challenging for me actually. I liked it at the end. Anyway, so I got to. When I was arriving to Tbilisi, one of the ideas that I had in my mind is that as I will be representative for PNG in Armenia and Georgia, so there will be an office for me. So there will be a PNG office, like you would normally have it. but of course there was PNG is conscious company, so there was no need to rent a particular single office for one person. And even at the height, there were not many PNGers on ground in Georgia. So there was agreement with local distributor, with Arti, that they would provide me with office. So they would provide me with office space within their office. But Arti was also a very cost-conscious company, and they didn't have any extra spare or whatsoever offices for me to be sitting in. I think actually at that point of time there were only two separate rooms outside of the the open space. There were two separate rooms. One which was mostly for keeping cash and was working as a cashier. There were a couple of people. I think two people were sitting in that particular room. 2 or 3, and there was another sort of separate office or separate room, which was place where company manager and co-owner, or we would call it managing partner, Kibar was sitting. So and it was rather larger room, more or less the size of the room that you see on the back of me. And it had Kibar's desk and larger sort of meeting desk with maybe 6 chairs around it. So it was 3 chairs on one side, 3 chairs on maybe 2 and 2, maybe 3 and 3. So it was like T-shape. So Kibar's desk and the meeting desk. It was something that was very typical in that time, and you still can find it in offices of sort of bigger managers, if they sit in a single office. I came with this sort of, where is my office? Where is my separate room? And they were like, we don't have any. And I'm like, there was an agreement that you have to. Well, that's how I remember it. I remember that I was a bit, pushy, that they're not giving me something. And Kibar said, well, the only thing you can sit in, and what we have thought is, you can sit in my office. We can sit together. It's okay. We can sit together. And it was a bit. I was a bit. Lost in a way, that how I'm gonna be sharing sort of a desk with a guy, and he says, it's okay. You can do that. It was more okay for him than for me, and of course it was creating a bit of troubles in future, because of course I I had to talk. I had to discuss Armenian distributor was PNG, so that was nothing to do with Kibar, and there were some maybe things he was not supposed to know, and there were some. Of course, we had discussions around Kibar and his company as well, and not always. When you report about results or distributor, you're not always speak about something that you want them to hear or know, right? So, but that was solvable, of course, and it was solved in days to come. But what I was saying in the very beginning of this series is that. I mean, Georgia and my presence in Caucasus were in a large part were building me as a personality. In large part, Georgia was responsible for me growing up, both as personality, as manager, as leader, as whoever I became in my life. And actually, of course, sitting with Kibar in the same room and ability to hear and see him in action, not like just see what is happening around, were great teachers for me, and I really appreciate that it turned out this way, and yeah, and of course the bond that was created by me sitting in the same room with him was much more stronger and laid fundamentals to, as well as business results back then, as for our future friendship in years to come. But initially it was a bit confusing for me how to act there and how to do this and how to do that. And one more small detail, I mean, probably it was like second or third day when I was already all the sort of logistics on my being in the office were handled, and I just arrived to office, and it was November. This is pretty typical time for me to get a bit cold, and back in a day I was this very motivated young manager who would whatever, if I would have like 38.5 degrees temperature, I would just drink something to kill the temperature, and I would go to work. And I remember that I had this cold, and one of the things that we took with us was some kind of hot drink that I don't know what, Teraflu or Coldrex or all those other names that you could imagine. And I had that sachet with this hot drink, and I of course obviously need hot water. So, and initially I had no idea where to get it, and so I asked the assistant of Kibar that could she bring me hot water. And of course they would be used to people asking for hot coffee or for hot tea, but I was asking for just hot water. So they were very curious about what I'm gonna do. So I remember that there was a bit like she gave me this cup of hot water, and there was this curiosity of what is going to happen, and she was, I think, maybe looking behind the door or something like that, trying to understand. And of course I was opening sachet and pouring it in, so there was this a bit funny moment of what this foreigner will be doing. Well, I was explaining the differences of living standard, and for whatever reason, I would say for reason of our personal ignorance and not being very mature, I had this feeling that we are coming from well-off country, even though I was understanding that we are not US or France or whatsoever on a living standard part of view. But anyway, I had this feeling that we are coming from here, and Georgia is somewhere there, and. Yeah, well, I'm a bit ashamed, and it's a bit sad that I was having this sort of feeling initially, and I actually had it for a while, for a while in Georgia before I really got into understanding the country and culture and everything. But anyway, I was a bit sick, but also our daughter, which was a year and a bit, got something like, I don't know, cough and temperature and everything, and of course we had like, we would absolutely exclude the possibility of going to local medical doctor. We searched for, you know, for like something more upscale. Maybe also because back in Latvia we were not using the mainly we were not using state medicine, but we were using the private clinic back then. That probably was part of the picture as well. But anyway, we found this company which was established by to serve British Petroleum pipeline workers, and a company which for some reason I remember one of the names, IMS, which was International Medical Services. But that the company was changing names several times, even though the crew stayed the same and everything stayed the same. So it might be some kind of whatever name of some period that I remember. And of course, as they were serving British Petroleum people, they would be serving also other mostly foreigners. And we found that company, and luckily I had like fantastic health insurance coverage for me and my family, provided by PNG, and I could afford that. And then we brought. They were renting. Initially, they were renting like a private house, and then in a private house you have a setup of a private house. You have a I don't know, a big dining hall, and you have smaller rooms which are sort of adjusted to be offices of doctors. But of course, it's the quality is mainly because of the doctors are foreign. It's not that they have like much of a lot of other stuff, and they were more sort of dedicated to handling people with life-threatening traumas than maybe doing something else. But of course, when it comes to sort of regular things like cough and temperature, of course they were qualified far above that. So so that's and then there was I don't remember names anymore, but there was this very nice Georgian guy who was also a doctor, and he was acting more like a translator between English-speaking doctor and whatever other local languages may pop up, and. So and that was just interesting experience of getting there first time and sorting this out, and then they, as I remember, they had like a annual payment that you had to pay for to be sort of a member of that clinic, and only members then would have the access to doctors. And a funny thing was that in contract, in a list of services that you can have from them was evacuation by a chopper, and that was just a funny line. Probably it was mostly for the pipe workers who would be in the middle of nowhere when something happens. But it was a bit funny thing to have a clinic that states that they would evacuate it in you in case of something. So one of the big reasons for us to move from hotel to apartment was that as I said in a previous episode, we were living in a pretty cramped situation, and then on top I was a bit sick, my daughter was a bit sick. Of course, a kid when he's a year and something old and he's a bit temperature, he's more nervous, crying more, so it was like very difficult to sleep or very difficult to do whatever, and you're all cramped in this 10 square meters of room, and of course my wife was just locked in that room, so like of course she could walk in a hotel, but I mean it's not like a lot of fun. And based on that, we felt like we have to get out. We just, no matter what, we found that kind of okay apartment with that Soso had. Our stuff, our belongings were still in transit, and we had no idea when they would arrive. but we just felt like we have to get out. We just have to move and do something and get some more space. Well, that apartment had some furniture, so we were not moving much of furniture from Latvia, but there was some, like our bed was coming from Latvia. Yeah, so we felt like we have to move. And as I mentioned before, our belongings arrived quite much later. So in next episode, I would probably start telling you how we got stuffed with all the things that we need, and also how we were handling some hardships, like I was mentioning electricity in a previous video, but also heating, because we moved in like beginning of December, which is maybe 10-15 degrees on the street, but it's raining. It's not those positive spring 15 degrees. It's not very pleasant November 15 degrees, but maybe not 15, it's 12, 8, so it shifts back and forth, and we had to solve the heating, which was not available in apartment, as in many apartments of Tbilisi back in the day, and also still not many apartments have heating. So this is an episode to come. So thank you for watching this. I would really appreciate if you subscribe to the channel, and if you liked the video, if you really liked it, and see you in next episodes.